0 to 60 can define a performance car, but it's the fastest 60 to 0 that's the aim of Tarok's brakes. From road cars to race cars, circuits, special stages, or the autostrada, nothing reduces speed like Tarok's brakes. Italy gave the world the art of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. Tarok's has given drivers the art of stopping. For more information and to acquire your own masterpiece, visit tarox.co.uk. Yes, it's me, Mike Stone, and this is the Backseat Driver Podcast. It's the fastest, it's the friendliest, and it's for all the family. The Gas Shocks 116 Trophy and 120 Coupe Cup are the fastest growing race series in the UK, taking in 6 one-hour races and 8 sprints at all the top circuits. Visit 116trophy.com to find out more and get yourself behind the wheel. From a pot of tea to TT motorbikes. From a classic English breakfast to a full serving of classic cars. Bridge House Tea Rooms is the Northwest premier classic car meeting location for cars, bikes, tractors and owners clubs. So no matter what your automotive appetite might be, visit Bridge House Farm Tea Rooms on their Facebook page or call John and Alicia on 07980 444 221 for show details and to reserve your own table and parking space.
I'd like to welcome back for part 3 of his, shall we say his biography or autobiography, Mike Wood, rally co-driver extraordinaire. When we finished, we'd just been doing some of the big internationals behind the wheel and in the co-driver's seat of the Land Crabs, the big 1800s. Not the most graceful cars, but reliable and strong, and they got to the end of events. But one other rally, or all the other rallies, one rally that you were commenting on, and you did 6 of them, was the Tulip Rally, or Tulip Rally, which technically was based in Holland, but it covered a far greater area than Holland.
Well, it had to cover a greater area than Holland because there's not much rally territory in Holland. It's as flat as you can be. So it immediately went out of Holland into Belgium, and then most of the event took part in France. And that was the nature of almost just about all the Tulip rallies.
Yeah. I mean, what were you driving or what were you co-driving it?
Well, let me start at the beginning. My very first international rally was the 1955 Tulip Rally, which I knew a lot about, but I never dreamed I'd do it. And it was one of the first events to get going after the war, and it always attracted a big British entry because of its proximity to the UK.
Yeah.
And this particular year, 1955, I was having a good year navigating in England and winning quite a few events. And I got a phone call from the competition manager of Ferodo, a guy called Sid Henson, who I knew of, I'd never met him, and Sid said to me, "Look, Mike," he said, "you've never met me before." He said, "I'm competition manager for Ferodo." And he said, "I've got myself a Works Ford Zephyr for the Tulip Rally."
Yeah.
He said, and he's a good navigator. He said, "So are you interested in joining us?" And I said, "Certainly." He said, "Yeah, well, there'll be another driver." And it was a guy called Jack Welsh from the Ford competition department. There'll be 2 drivers and you'll be doing the navigating.
Yeah.
In a Ford Zephyr Mark 1. So that was my very first Tulip Rally.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. We did finish. I think we finished in the 50s. Sid wasn't the fastest driver in the world, but it was an experience for me. And quite rightly, it did start in Holland, but immediately went out in Holland. And that particular year, we headed out towards Arnhem and then went over onto the German Autobahn.
Yeah.
I have to think that the war hadn't been finished for all that, just 10 years.
Yeah.
And we were out at night, and we were on the Autobahn straight away, heading basically for Stuttgart. So it was an all-night drive down the Autobahn. And we had the Tulip Rally road books, and they were very good. But I also had the map, and I remember the very first junction sign on the Autobahn, and it gave names, and it also gave this name, Ausfahrt.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've never heard of a town called Ausfahrt. And I'm looking on the map, and I can't see it anywhere. And about another 10 kilometres down the road, another junction came up, and it said, signpost Ausfahrt again. And I thought, that must be massive, this place. Of course, it means exit, so that was my first thing. And so we went on, I think we went, I can't remember how far, we went quite down into France. But that was my first introduction to international rallying. There weren't special stages in those days, but points were lost for hill climbs and stuff like that.
Because back then, the roads were closed for a lot of the rallies, weren't they? The roads were open to the public.
I think possibly that. The Tulip Rally always did a climb of the Col de Four Seal, which comes out of Geneva.
Yeah.
And it's a big main road. And in those days, right up to my last Tulip in 1968, they use the Four Seal.
Yeah.
And close the Four Seal.
All right.
And now you go over it, it's a big trunk road. They don't do that nowadays, but they close the Four Seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've said this before. When you did these events, they were long events.
Yes, there were long events, but that was the nature of it.
Yeah.
My big introduction to rallying was, before I'd ever dreamt, before I'd even been on a rally, I used to listen every January, because we'd no television, I'd listen on the radio to Raymond Baxter.
Yeah.
And he
was just putting in a competitive driver in his own right.
He was on he always reported in January on the Monte Carlo Rally.
Yeah.
And it was something like a half-hour program every evening.
Yeah.
And Raymond was on the event itself, but managed to send a report in every night of where he was and how much snow there was. And I was fascinated. And it was a dream to me. I can't possibly imagine I'd ever do a Monte Carlo Rally.
Yeah.
And of course, I finished up doing 9, and I also got to know Raymond Baxter very well as well.
I mean, for a lot of people who don't know, and I mean, it's a program that ended a long while ago. Raymond Baxter went on to present Tomorrow's World.
We did indeed.
Back in the 60s and 70s was the program that introduced us all to modern technology.
He reported on royal occasions on the radio. He was a top commentator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, back then, a lot of the drivers and co-drivers, no disrespect, were still amateurs, weren't they? I mean, you didn't altogether make your living out of doing it.
Quite right, they were. I mean, that's a typical, because I was very much an amateur co-driver.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to say that, as far as I can remember, that Tulip really didn't cost me anything. And I'm also, most of my internationals haven't cost me anything. I've never made much money out of it. But at least I've because of my ability, and going on from that Tulip and talking about ability, once I'd done that Tulip, I got my first international under my belt. And then I did the 56 RAC rally with John Waddington. And then we did the 58 Monte Carlo Rally, or part of it, and 59 Monte. And by then, I'm starting to get international events.
Yeah. Well, you start to be recognised.
And, well, if the team managers, if they were looking for someone, they wanted somebody that had experience.
Yeah.
And everyone internationally you did gave you more experience.
Yeah.
Until eventually, of course, you got on their books.
I mean, the other thing was, back then, it's like you said, people did the Tulip Rally or the Tulip Rally because Holland was close by. It was easy to get to from England. But back then, going abroad, for want of a better term, wasn't a regular thing. So knowing how it operated in Europe would have been an advantage. Because, I mean, things operate relatively the same, but they will be that little bit different. And you have to get used to how they did things.
That's right, yeah, very much so.
But, I mean, from there, I mean, one event you also went on to do, though you only did one, regrettably, but it's an event that's close to my heart because I competed, courtesy of a friend of mine, in 6 of them, was the Tour de France Auto, which is an incredible distance. And it's as much as a road race, a circuit race, a hill climb race, as it is a rally. Most of them, to my knowledge, started in Paris, because all the ones I did started in Paris. I mean, what was that like? Because that would have been a different sort of event.
It was an event I'd always followed, and I could go back a bit on this one. I was on holiday in the mid-50s with my wife-to-be. We'd ridden down to Menton, and we were staying in Menton, and the Tour de France at that particular time finished that year, that whilst I was at Menton, in Nice.
Yeah.
So we nipped across to Nice to watch the finish.
Yeah.
And there was wonderful racing sports cars, Ferraris on it, and GT40s, which are worth millions of pounds now. And so I saw that finish, and after that I never ever got much interest in it because it was never on our schedule, wasn't the Tour de France? It wasn't recognised as a rally. But coming into early 1970s, after BMC had closed and I'd finished with, I had lost my position at Ford as well. We were driving for various teams.
Yeah.
Tony Fall and myself, and we got an invite to join the BMW rally team.
Yeah.
BMW were basically a racing team, and the competition department was run by a fantastic ex-racing driver, Jochen Neerpasch. But they decided to do some rallying because they had a very excellent car at that time, with the BMW 2002.
Which was their little saloon, which was what you might call their ordinary everyday little car.
Exactly, but it had a 2-litre engine in it.
Yeah.
And a good BMW 2-litre engine.
Yeah.
So they prepared the car. We did various events for them. I did the Austrian Alpine with them. I did the Acropolis Rally with them. But this particular year, I think it was 71 or 72, and Jochen asked us if we would be interested to do the, I don't think he asked, he was telling us. We were doing the Tour de France, which I'd never done before, which was a vast event.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not even sure where it started.
As I said, these days it starts in Paris because it's part of the Peter Auto organisation.
That's right, and it went everywhere. And basically the Tour de France was like a rally, in as much as you did drive through the night in those days. But it basically...
Yeah, just putting in, he told me I was soft because all the ones I did, we got to stop and go to bed every night.
But basically, the format was the same. It took in as many racing circuits as it could do.
Yeah.
Also classified hill climbs. I don't remember any special stages as such, but we did almost all the racing circuits in Barcelona, Montjuic, Le Mans, not the full circuit there. The Bugatti circuit, we did Clermont round, Magny-Cours,
Beauregard, which was one of my favorites.
Beauregard, Nürburgring.
Yeah.
And we did those, and it was a very excellent event, and they entered the 2 cars, Tony Fall and myself in one, and Rauno Altonen and Paul Easter in another, and they entered them in the fuel injection car, which they were just experimenting with, really.
Yeah.
And we had the normal carburetor version, which probably just as fast as that one. But unfortunately for Rauno and Paul, they went off the road on the first night. So it just left Tony and I. And we went round this and we had a very, very good event. And basically, we won our category at the end, which is the same as winning the event outright.
Yeah.
You got exactly the same prize money as winning on scratch and the same award. And I think we finished 6th overall on scratch.
Yeah.
Which was an excellent result for BMW, and we won our category.
Well, I know one thing you were saying, that BMW, good cars as they were, weren't too red hot on servicing. The famous, well, everybody calls it Mondori or Monteleri, It was originally the Circuit de Paris, and it's the Big Bank Circuit. You were saying you had to buy tyres.
Well, quite right. They weren't. I mean, they weren't a patch on the old BMC service setup.
Yeah.
And something like the Tour de France, it was a huge event, and it was very difficult unless you had a massive army of mechanics to cover everywhere. And I remember we were on our way we had to do this circuit at Montjuic in Paris. And we hadn't had any service for a while, and we were running out of tyre. And Tony had to do the thing. And he said, look, whilst they never put the navigators in on the circuits. The navigators didn't go around the circuit, thankfully. And
just putting in when I did, the navigator was in the car because the first 10 laps were regularity, and then you stopped. It was very civilised. We got to then go and have some lunch as a rule. Then the co-driver got thrown out, and you went out and actually did 20-minute races.
Well, we didn't do any of the circuits, and as I say, I never bothered about that.
Yeah.
And so whilst Tony said, well, whilst I'm doing my 10 laps or whatever it is, he said, can you see if we get some tyres? We need some tyres.
Yeah.
So whilst he was doing that, I was really trying to do them up a Gunyo or Michelin, buying tyres and then we had them fitted by them because we had no service mechanics to do it.
What was BMW's reaction to that?
Oh, I don't think we mentioned it really. No, I think that wasn't a big deal.
I mean, the one reason that event could run back then and run now is you suddenly realise how many circuits and hill climbs exist in France. It's full of them.
It's full of them.
Some you've never heard of, but when you get to them, you realise what fantastic little circuits they are.
Exactly.
A lot of them tend to be multi-bike.
Who's heard of Montjuic? Most great.
Yeah.
And then if you go to Barcelona, they have in Spain, they have the permanent circuit now where the Formula One, but they used to have the one called Montjuic, which was basically in the town.
Yeah.
And I remember that was our first, I think, no, it wasn't our first circuit, but we went to Montjuic and we'd done a recce for the whole event.
Yeah. Which
was Norland over there. That was a wonderful recce because it took a long time, and we got handed loads of money to do it. And
some very nice restaurants in France.
We were able to do a full reconnaissance of Montjuic because it was a public road.
Right.
The other circuits, you couldn't get onto them. You could just go there. But Montjuic, we went round it and did it a few laps. And I always remember when we went there on the day, I think Tony had to do about 5 laps or 6 laps or something. That was, they put so many cars on. Not every car in the event was on the same thing. And when it came out, we had our 10 cars we were up against, and most of the co-drivers sat in the grandstand.
Yeah.
Where it started and watched like spectators. And I always remember on the Montjuic where they fired them off and off they went, disappeared. And then we could hear them coming back. Could only hear one car, and it was Tony.
Yeah.
There was nobody else there. There'd been a big shunt behind.
Yeah.
But, of course, we had much faster cars than ours, and eventually caught him up. But he didn't do badly anyway.
I mean, the one thing about that event was it attracted, it's like we were saying, classes and categories. So you'd have huge, the 250 Ferraris, Ford GT40s. And at the bottom, at the other end, you'd have little Panhards and little Renaults and things like that.
You're exactly right there. The Tour de France was basically what they wanted. They wanted the super racing sports cars.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, cars like BMW 2002 or Ford Capris couldn't possibly keep up with those.
Yeah.
So that was their category. Then it became our category. We'll call it a touring car category. But we had quick cars in them. For instance, you had the full Ford Works team on that, and they had basically racing Capris, which were very, very quick, much quicker than our car.
Yeah.
And so you were up against them, but the BMW could hold its own. And I always remember the finish. we finished and won our category, and there was the prize giving at night in a big place in Nice, and we all went.
Oh, but that's one thing, Eric. That's one thing they do at the end of them. You're in a spectacular setting, beautiful hotel or something. Last one I did, we were in the fort at Marseille Harbour, and it's very spectacular.
Fantastic. Some of the events, like Monte Carlo, you were requested to go in evening dress.
Yeah.
I don't think we went in evening, but you were well dressed and presented, and it was a big do with all the trophies there. And remember, eventually we were called up for our trophy, and we knew that the prize money was quite good.
Yeah.
And when we came back, we had the trophy, and Tony had in his hand the envelope with the cheque in it, and he opened it up, and it was a cheque which came to the equivalent of about £1,800 in those days.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Which was a lot of
You're
money.
probably into about 8, 9, 10 grand now.
But as always, if you won money in there, the money was paid out in the currency of the current country you were in. And of course, when Tony O'Roy said, goodness me, he said, it's French francs again. He said, we're going to have to struggle in the morning.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman sat next to me, and he said, I'm very sorry, I've been listening to your conversation. He said, I think I can help you with that. He said, if you come to my office in the morning,
Yes.
He said, I'll change the money into French francs and give you that. Oh, that'd be lovely. Whereabouts is your office? He said, oh, I'm the manager of the casino. So there we were at 10 o'clock in the morning, banging on his door.
Now, I mean, another major event you did was the original, as you've written on your CV, London to Sydney Marathon. I mean, that was the first of, I think it's 3, the London to Sydney, London Mexico, London Munich, of the serious distance marathon rallies. I mean, how did you get involved with that, and who?
Well, it was BNC. The BNC team was still in existence.
Yeah.
But this event was going to take place in December of 1968.
Yeah.
But by then, British Leyland had taken over BNC. And
Mr. Stokes or Lord Stokes was altogether fond of competition.
And one of the things, the first thing they did was announce that they were closing the competition department at the end of 1968. You could understand them a bit, because by then BMC really didn't have a competitive car. Ford Escort was coming along, and the Mini had run its day. But so we had a limited number of events we did in 68, but they managed to persuade British Leyland to do the last event of the year. They newly announced London-Sydney Marathon. So they entered 4 official worked cars. There was ourselves, Paddy Hopkirk, 2 Australian drivers, and Rowner Alton. There's Hopkirk, Alton, and ourselves were the main. The 4th car was for a couple of Australian drivers. And so they entered 1,800 on that. And that was a vast event. And I remember they started, or there was, they drew it out of a hat, and we were car number 5, I think. Or number 4. And which was a good number to have. And the event started in London at Crystal Palace, went all the way through France, it went all the way down through Yugoslavia, into Turkey, Bulgaria, into Turkey, into Iran, into Afghanistan. We went up the Khyber Pass, into Pakistan, and then on to Bombay. We then, as a part sponsorship, we had a P&O line, I think it was a P&O, called to pick us up. They could only take 50 cars, but they picked the top 50. I think they managed to put 60 on, because we were about 50, somewhere in the 50s. And that then was a 9-day sail to Perth in Australia. Then we drove all the way across Australia to Sydney. Not on main roads, I have to say. And so it was a vast event.
I mean, what was service like? I mean, did you have service?
Yes, we had service, good service everywhere. we utilised a lot of local BMC agents
Yeah.
in various countries, but we still had our official service and the
Yeah.
BMC flew its mechanics across to Australia, for
Yeah.
instance. Interesting story. We were doing quite well, but then in the middle of the Iranian desert, late in the night, we hit a big bump adrift, and a steering arm broke.
Yeah.
Snapped totally in half. And that was us, we thought. Our teammate, Alton, who should have been in front of us, was behind us. But he passed us. He said, "Stay where you are." He said, "I'll send somebody back."
Yeah.
And eventually some locals came back in quite a nice car, and they knew we were a problem. They said, "Look," he said, "get in the car. We'll take you to one of the villages. A blacksmith there will mend that steering arm for you," because that's the sort of things they did. Blacksmiths had to do that. And there were three of us in this car. Tony was the main driver, Brian Culture was the second driver, and of course I was the navigator. I have to tell you, I drove 2/3 of that event. My driver slept all the way.
I know we were saying in part one that back then co-drivers drove and probably drove more than the drivers did.
I always remember a good remark that Brian Coulter used to say. He said, "I was sat in the back seat, and Tony was driving, and he said, there was Mike," he said, "in the navigator's seat. He was asleep."
Yeah.
He said, "I was asleep in the back, and Tony was asleep at the wheel." But when we broke the steering arm, and interestingly, we left Brian with the car.
Yeah.
Now, it would never happen nowadays, but when the regulations came out, they recommended that we take a firearm with us in the shape of a pistol.
Yeah.
Everybody was recommended this, and
Yeah.
I had bought one in Italy, a Beretta 2.2.
Yeah.
We took this, and when we set off to go to this village in this local's car, Brian with the car, I gave him the gun. I said, "Save the last bullet for yourself." Long story short, we were way down. We lost a lot of time there, so we weren't very high in classification. But we finished the event, I think, about 24th. Yeah.
But I mean, that was still an achievement, 24th. I mean,
you wanted to win.
Yeah.
24th was nothing, but when you think about it now, it's a good result.
I mean, we were talking and looking at some of your results, especially like the Peter Robinson history of the Motoring News. You commented back then you wanted to win. Finishes were all well and good, but you've said as time's gone by, you've realised your finishes were actually quite significant.
Well, I remember in 1967, after the Monte Carlo Rally, the next event was the San Remo Rally. It was called the Rally Fiore, Rally of the Flowers in those days. And BMC entered two cars, one for Paddy, 2 minis, one for Paddy and Henry Liddon, and one for Tony Fall and myself.
Yeah.
At the end of the piece, Paddy finished second, and we finished fourth.
Yeah.
And at that time, I don't suppose even Paddy would have thought it was a good result. He wanted to win.
Yeah.
And we would have been happy with second.
Yeah.
Fourth was no good. And now when I think about it, I had a lot of top 10 finishes.
Yeah.
Which at the time I wasn't happy about, but they were good results when I think about it now.
And I think, in my opinion, it doesn't apply today, but when you were rallying, it did an incredible amount for sales of these cars, didn't it? Because like we said before, people could recognise the cars that they saw rallying.
Well, they were normal cars.
Yeah.
Okay, if you were looking to drive for any works team, be it BMC, Root, Stroot, Ford, obviously their cars were better.
Yeah.
They couldn't do much to them, but they were better tuned and did produce a bit more brake horsepower than the normal.
Yeah. They would be seam welded. The cages would be in everything.
Oh, yes, and some guards and stuff like that, yeah.
But, the other thing, I read a lot of the history of motorsport, and the one thing, unlike today's rallying, the number of times drivers would find a co-driver, they'd drive a different car. I've just been reading Chris Slater's book, and he drove Escorts on one event, Datsuns on another, Vauxhalls on another, BMW on another. when you were doing, you didn't really have a fixed car to drive all the time.
Well, if you drove for a works team,
Yeah.
you drove their car.
Yeah.
And you drove their car all year. You
Yeah.
didn't drive anything else. But when BMC closed down, and I then drove with Hanno Mittler in 1969 for a year. But after that, I was made redundant from Ford, and I went back with Tony. But then I drove with Gerard LaRousse, for
Yeah.
instance, on the 1970 RAC rally. We did a good result on that. And I drove with Alton on the Tour de Corse. And
Yeah.
I drove with Tony Pond. But mostly I drove with Tony Fall. And we were freelance. So
Well, we're going to say that Tony Fall's Tony Fall and Mike Wood are the famous combination, aren't they?
Morecambe and Wise of
Yeah.
and we were British.
Yeah.
We were Lancashire and Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And people were interested in that. And we did have a good sense of humour.
Yeah.
And Tony was a good driver. So we were able to attract interest we had Datsun, we drove for Datsun.
Yeah.
But in the same year, we might even have driven for BMW, Porsche, Lancia, Peugeot, VW. Yeah.
I mean, how did these invitations come about, or were manufacturers looking for a crew to put in, and aye, Fall and Wood are available, we think?
Yes, yeah. That's the way it happened.
Yeah.
And I think we were mainly tied together with Datsun.
Yeah.
and that was an enjoyable time. But yes, I think people wanted it. But at the end of 1973, we decided call it a day.
Yeah.
I'd been doing it since 1955.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, it was the time of the petrol rationing because of the Suez crisis.
Yeah, because a lot of rallies got
So
cancelled.
the 74 Monte Carlo rally was cancelled, for instance. So that was the end of my rallying career.
But, I mean, there's one or two other things to do. But when we come back for part 4, we'll be chatting with Mike about what he did when he finished rallying. So until then, once again, Mike Wood, many thanks for joining me on The Backseat Driver.
Rarely beaten on price, never beaten on service. Whether it's cars, bikes or commercials, Hoddy Tyres are the best in the business. And when it comes to tyre expertise and advice to supplying the correct tyres for your vehicle's specific requirements, nobody comes close to David Lakin and the Hoddy Tyres team. So give them a call on 01200 613 192 or visit the website at hoddytyres.co.uk.